Hi there, it is Thursday, November 12th. This is the 8th grade English Language Arts Hanby Middle School class recap. My name is Mr. Newman, and let's get started. So we're going to start with our planner as we always do. Sorry, it is Thursday, November 12th. Our goal for today, I can consider a character's conflict, supporting it with evidence. Before we do that, we have some time in No Red Ink, and please note that the No Red Ink components of a sentence assignment and quiz are due today. We've got 12 minutes on the timer. I'll have you open the planner or just set a timer for 12 minutes in No Red Ink to start. Remember that I will not post your quiz until you show mastery in the assignment. If you're having trouble with it, please reach out either via email or Google Classroom. And when you turn in your assignment, make sure that you also, or when you finish it, make sure that you turn it in through Google Classroom so that I can post your quiz. Okay, I'll pause the video while you write for 12 minutes. Or sorry, while you work in No Red Ink for 12 minutes. Well, hello and welcome back. So today, looking at our goal on understanding conflict, we're going to review some slides, part of which you worked on in the last couple of days. And then you'll finish with an exit ticket on conflict. So let's look at our slides here. Okay, starting at the beginning. So we're looking at conflict in literature. This slideshow is in part a recap, in that there are some things that you've seen before and in part new. So it has some different colors when you see things like this that are gray. These correspond with the notes that you should have in your notebook on page R14. So on R14, if you haven't done it already, I hope that you set up a T-chart where you have external conflict on one side and internal conflict on the other. Internal conflict, we only have man versus self, which means in the bottom half of internal conflict, you are going to have your details on the definition of conflict. Okay, again, this is R14, or 14 pages counting in from the front. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to keep scrolling through this. I want you to pause the video to write things down as you need to. So have conflict defined somewhere on R14. Conflict is a struggle between two opposing forces within a story that drives the plot forward. Again, conflict, this thing we're talking about, is a struggle between two opposing forces within a story that drives the plot forward. Okay, it's not just a conflict, but something comes up, and as a result of that, something changes or other things happen in the story. All right. So recognizing there are two types of conflict, there is internal conflict and external conflict. Let's look at our form of internal conflict. This is man versus self. Again, this is a gray slide. Please pause to make sure that you have recorded this on page R14 in your notebook. Man versus self conflict takes place within a character's mind. It can include mixed emotions, a struggle to make a decision, self-image, fears, etc. All examples of internal conflict. So if we look at this within the context of Lamb to the Slaughter, Mary had a couple of instances of internal conflict. One of them is when she realizes that her husband is leaving her, and she has this question of, what will I do? And this real struggle of like, do I fight this? Do I not? She's walking downstairs to get something out of the freezer. She's kind of numb. Okay, afterwards, and our main example of internal conflict in Lamb to the Slaughter is after she has clubbed her husband with the leg of lamb. And instead now, her conflict is, do I turn myself in? What will happen to the baby? Okay, so that is an example. Let's look at another one. When we think about external conflicts, we have three different kinds: man versus man versus nature, and man versus society. So again, for your notes, man versus society is when an individual is in conflict with the rules of the world around her or him. Okay, when an individual is in conflict with the rules of the world around her or him. And again, external conflicts, they take place between a character and someone or something else. Pause the video if you need to write this down. When we look at man versus society, and thank you, ma'am, Roger has broken one of the rules of society. That is when he tries to steal Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones's purse. Okay, so this creates a man versus society conflict. The rule that he's broken, that stealing is not considered an acceptable norm in our society, and he's worried that Miss Luella Bates Washington Jones will haul him away, take him to the police, or that he'll go to jail. Okay, so if you were in class, there were some things in here that we discussed in breakout groups. This is one here. Blue is for breakout groups. So the blue slides were discussed. I'll just give an overview of what we did. All right. So the first one is in man versus society in Lamb to the Slaughter. So the man versus society conflict here is that Mary has killed someone. And more specifically, that Mary has killed her husband. In an era where women are supposed to dote on men and follow their every word and take whatever they say. And here she's gone off and done none of that. Okay. If you were following yesterday and you went through the paradox slide yesterday, you would have listened to the audiobook for valediction. This is also linked in Google Classroom. If we look at ours for November 12th today, you'll see that there is valediction, the story that is here. So I'm acting as if you have read it. Here's our slideshow. If you want to hear it in the slideshow, you can come to this very slide and hear the audiobook where I read it. Okay, but our next two questions are based on valediction. First, though, we have a couple of notes. This one, man versus nature. This conflict occurs when a character encounters forces in the natural world that present a major obstacle and must be overcome. Again, please pause if you need additional time to record this. This goes on R14 in your notebook. Man versus nature conflict occurs when a character encounters forces in the natural world that present a major obstacle and must be overcome. Finally, our last item of notes, man versus man, or individual versus individual conflict occurs when two or more characters have opposing desires or interests leading to a conflict or confrontation. So this is where we went back to our groups. We're looking at the story of valediction. Okay. In valediction, the main man versus man conflict. So there were lots of examples that came up during the day. There was a confrontation between Pete and the principal, where Pete is being accused. John has been caught shoplifting, and Pete is being accused of being involved. There's the conflict between Pete and John at the end of the story, with each of them saying, you know what, you're not the person who I thought you were. There's a conflict earlier where Pete challenges John to stop shoplifting. And John says, you know, what are you scared? Like, why aren't you going to do this? Okay, so all of these man versus man. Our final question regarding this in valediction, man versus self. The man versus self conflict in valediction, give an example of that. So here we see Pete's kind of internal dialogue. We're stealing. We really shouldn't be doing this. Should I turn myself in? What will happen if I do that? Okay. So we see kind of his internal dialogue throughout. All right. So today's class ends with an exit ticket. Now, this is something that you will find in Google Classroom. Okay. And it's right here, the conflict exit ticket, and it looks like this. So it's that same slide from the slides, truncated a little bit. So discuss a scenario where you experienced conflict. Describe the background, conflict, and how it was resolved. It's not a 1 or 2 sentence answer. Like, you want to tell a story here. So you want to think about man versus self versus society versus nature. Like, where or how did you encounter this? And what happened? So tell the story, tell the conflict, tell why you think your story meets that definition of conflict, and then how did it resolve? This is today's class recap. I hope you had a great day. Take care.